Bismillah.
Bismillah. Welcome to Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Dawah Dojo, brothers and sisters. Dawah Dojo is a no-holds-barred discussion, bit of banter, bit of discussion, current events, as you like. Sometimes we're structured, sometimes we're not. Join us on this journey if you enjoy it. If not, have a nice day or evening. Anyways, what we wanted to discuss today is a few events and things that have been happening quite recently. Obviously, the main theme for Muslims at the moment is the whole issue of Palestine, very close to all of us. However, Palestine itself, obviously, the people in the front line are the ones who experience the brunt of the situation. We, as Muslims in the West, we have a considerable responsibility, and whether it's universities, whether it's in communities, whether it's raising awareness, there have been people who have been at the forefront of confronting these issues. And at the same time, the establishment, this nefarious establishment, which is making money off the blood of Palestinians through sponsoring the Zionist regime, providing it with support, providing it with diplomatic cover, and even more recently, prosecuting people on the most flimsiest of pretexts, just to appease this genocidal death cult regime of Israel. So recently, for example, they went for Richard Medhurst. They arrested him under the Anti-Terror Act, confiscated all his electronic media, and they've also arrested and charged Majid Freeman, who's a charity worker, for events completely unrelated during the community riots, which were also instigated by another nefarious entity, the Hindutva affiliated Hindu nationalists. So there is clearly a witch hunt, not just against Muslims, but against anyone who has any kind of a conscience on the issue of Palestine. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just going to throw it out there. What have you guys been following it? What are your thoughts?
I just want to know one thing first before we start. How have you turned from a complete clown into this serious within 2 seconds, man? What's going on?
Bipolar.
Back in.
But yeah. So no one's gonna go. Is that?
I have to wait for my another identity to kick in.
Hey, you can start. You can go.
I think the cases are, there's a few of these cases, like the woman with the banner that had the coconuts with Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak. I think her name was Marieha, saying she just got acquitted yesterday or something.
Yeah.
I think they're just trying to make examples of people. Like they're just trying to find any type of reason to lock people up or scare them into going into these court cases so that they feel that people will get scared enough so they stop talking. Clearly that's not working, and clearly it's not going to. People are not as stupid as they think they are. They can try their games for everything, but you can see that it's still holding up, and people are still turning up for demos and all that sort of stuff every week. I think it's a joke. It shows desperation on their part. It shows that they don't really have much left. Even the sentencing Majid Freeman for 22 weeks, right? And apparently the claims are that he incited clashes and incited terrorism, apparently. So again, I don't know the finer details of the case, but again, it just shows that they're they're getting really desperate. But I mean, alhamdulillah, credit to the Muslims, especially credit to the youth, I would say, who haven't fallen for this, who haven't fallen for the fear-mongering, and the tactics of all these countries. They still continue to go out. They're still like in America, especially when they had the encampments at the universities, and it was like really encouraging to see the scholars and everything go with them, and people of the elder generation go with them, and stand together for all this sort of stuff. So yeah, alhamdulillah.
That's actually that's an excellent point, because in our generation, when our parents came over, in my case, it'd probably be like 100 years ago. But when they came over, there was this very, very much a mentality of, look, we're just here to make some money and don't rock the boat. Every mosque was like that. They were paranoid about, plus they have a very post-colonial mentality, a very subservient, that's the whole, that kind of mentality of, to the extent of not even being considered to be on a parity if there were blatant instances of racism or being overlooked. Complete subservience. The generation after are much more, the technical term is rago. The generation after did stand up for themselves. And even a simple example of, I have a lot of Bengali friends, and many years ago, I was there at one of the riots, and just to see the difference between these guys were not taking any excrement. They just went for it. So this is quite a big event where there was a racist incident, and these kids went for it. So they don't have this same kind of aversion. They have much more confidence
because they're born here.
Yeah,
they were from here from day one, isn't it? So they obviously see this as like, you know, this, they've got the same rights. Whereas if you came over at the age of like 40, 50, which some people did, to work here, you do feel like a visitor, don't you?
Mm-hmm. But there's also another element, which is just confidence. Because if you look at the Asian community, for an entire nation to be subjugated that much, there has to be some kind of social engineering going on. People who aren't brought up in this kind of system of subservience, or looking at this great entity as being something special, being amongst it, you realize that it's nothing. So if the effect of environment is quite important here, and this, I'm going to give an example. I'm going to go on a bit of a side note here, a side hustle, and that is, if you look at Islamic culturing, if you day by day equate yourself with the struggles of the Sahaba, say you're going through Sirah, I've seen the effect of, like, you know, this brother who does the Sirah class. You see the effect of people. They start attaching themselves to a completely different mode of understanding. Same way, for example, like if you remind yourself of Akhirah, your heart changes. This daily reminder of what's happening in Palestine, I think, has pushed people to a point of, what's the worst you're going to do? I do think this has a massive effect. From non-Muslims to Muslims, like this Richard Medhurst, he's prolific, and even another lady, Sarah Wilkinson, she's a grandmother. They even raided her house. These people are seeing what's happening. Children having to bear the brunt of responsibilities and events that, you know, you distribute that pressure among 100 men, they wouldn't be able to take it. But these kids are kind of, and just to see. So you know, what's the worst you're going to do? What's the worst you're going to do? I know a child has already gone through that. And if that child with tears in his eyes is just looking at me, how can I look back at that child and think, you know what, I'm too scared to even open my mouth. I'm not even going to do anything. This is why, for example, in the last broadcast, I had a go at this, the Mufti melt of the world, because I can't stomach it. I can't stomach it when people who know stay quiet. So now, as another one, for example, in our generation, the biggest pacifiers used to be the masajids. The imams were the subservient ones. Hmm. Another thing, what's positive now is that the youth, as the younger generation start to take on certain responsibilities, and they're infused with this kind of mentality and a strong understanding of Islam, which isn't cultural. What we can see is, I see considerable potential. It's effectively metastasized. You can't suppress it. Just as you can't suppress news, you can't stop people sharing the events that are happening in Palestine. Their spin is on deaf ears now. The same way ideas have developed.
Do you think it matters though, Rush? Like what you're saying is true in a sense, the people, but they're doing exactly what they want to do without any resistance. So even though what you're saying is true, people are speaking and people are raising awareness, and most of the world is against these people. That's the reality, isn't it? Mm. What difference does it make? They're literally coming out now and just saying, right, we're just going to do what we want to now, and there's nothing you can do about it.
They do worry though.
Netanyahu threatened what's his name? The Turkish puppet. What's his name?
Erdogan.
Personally, yeah, he said if he doesn't be quiet, we'll kill him. They bombed Iran. They killed Ismail Haniyeh in Iran. That's an act of war. Mm-hmm. They're doing nothing. No one's doing anything. There's no resistance. So I agree with you what you're saying, but I don't think it matters. I think it really doesn't matter.
I think there's a realistic middle ground in it, in the sense that they are feeling the pressure to a degree.
Absolutely, yeah. They're
They
feeling
are
the
feeling
pressure.
that from the political apparatus, the institutions, the governments who are siding with Israel and all this stuff. They are feeling it definitely. I don't think they imagined when this was like first kicking off that people would be as adamant and would stand up as much as they did and get such universal support. And I think the difference from 20 years ago talking about this stuff hugely is social media changes the game completely. Right?
Absolutely.
When information, you're not reliant on the established media protocols to get your information. Right, you're not as easily silenced. It's not as much propaganda anymore as it used to be, which is one factor. And I think you're absolutely right, Ricky, that they still have continued to do what they do and stand with Israel and commit the atrocities and still give them arms. But the fine line for them is that they do realize eventually that if they continue being as belligerent as they have been, people will see them for enabling mass murderers.
But
right?
what does it? You know what I think, Jamil? Yeah, is that it would matter if they were in a vulnerable position. So if you look at, for example, it's the same war, isn't it? Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Gaza, it's the same war. Yeah. You look at Iran's leverage was Russia. You watch as soon as America put Russia to the back on the back foot, they spent billions of pounds. Remember the last push they had? Billions of pounds into Ukraine. Ukraine pushed Russia back and they actually walked into their country. As soon as that happened, they killed Ismail Hani in Iran, and Iran has got no support to do anything back to them, and they know that. So the power dynamic is in their hand at the minute. And whilst the power dynamic is like that, I don't see them yielding. I think you're right. They didn't probably. This is a massive problem for them to deal with the public perceptions and the international governments that are not necessarily allied with them that are boycotting them. But until the power dynamic is not in their favour, all of this stuff is negligible. But
I think it changes. I think it changes, and the elections in the UK have been a good example of that. I think it's still in realistic terms, it's still like a fresh thing. It's still a new thing, right? In the sense that it's been less than a year or coming up to a year, right, since it's happened. That's still, in terms of affecting their processes and their political system, it's still quite new, right? But even in this election alone, you saw how much support certain parties lost already. How much, like independent support.
But what happened for him? What happened though? I mean, they did.
We're not going to get.
We've got the same monkeys in. We've got the same monkeys in charge of the.
Bro,
absolutely.
You're not going to get.
But that's because we also can't be naive about the scale of change, in the sense that these systems have been entrenched for hundreds upon hundreds of years, and it's like, for me personally, it's too early to think that like it's gonna change on such a dramatic level, because there's so many factors that like influence those decisions in terms of Parliament. I don't think it'll ever change, if I'm being honest with you. I don't think it'll ever change the system and how it approaches.
I don't think it would change. I don't think it would change. No, I think you're right.
Yeah, I don't think that's the goal, but there's always a limit.
I think
how the world works and how things like this work. There's always a limit.
Thing is, look,
for people before they see
in Western societies, they have to navigate in a certain way. So, for example, what are practical implications? Divestments. So there have been campaigns and public opinion in terms of preventing divestments, divesting from Israel, for example, certain institutions, educational institutions. Boycotts have been working. In terms
have been working, man. That's true.
In terms of elections as well. So, for example, you had some. I know I'm not necessarily a big fan of the system, etc., etc. But however, at the very least, they recognize that public opinion plays a part. Because look, we're not talking like there's not a totalitarian regime whereby, they can get away indefinitely. Because even the ICJ and how symbolic and how it's not just symbolic, but how much impact it has diplomatically in terms of South Africa and the various cases against them, that is sufficient to put them on the back foot. Militarily as well, Israel is getting a hammering of mammoth proportions, which is being suppressed. As far as Iran, now Iran at the end of the day, look, them saying about not support, to be honest with you, I think a lot of Iran. Now
I said that because if you look at the previous attack, then Russia stepped in and said, if America's stepping in, we're coming in. And that dissipated the situation. This time, you have to put the puzzle together yourself. You watch them bash up Russia, and all of a sudden, Iran's got no voice. Oh, we're going to retaliate. They ain't going to retaliate. I'll tell you right now, they're not going to retaliate.
But I think one thing about Iran. Look, I don't see Iran as being an honest actor here. I think it's entirely self-serving. I think, look,
Yeah, it may be self-serving.
no,
but
not just self-serving, but I'm saying in terms of nationalistic interests, and I'd say even to the extent of being subservient to America, and not being genuine. I don't think they're genuine at
I
all.
don't think they're subservient to America. I don't think you're wrong. Everyone's got their self-interest. Yeah, Iran's power is going to be built by joining what's the opposition of America. So, like for example, like the Shanghai Agreement, BRICS is joining, making alliances with the Arab countries that it formerly had problems with, allying with China, Russia. So, I don't think it's America's puppet, but I do think that Iran has got self-interest. Iran does not want to go into a war because economically that's disastrous, and that ruins all of those plans that they've got to try and, because they've been under 40 years of sanctions. Rush, do you know what I mean? So I think that they won't be that bold, and Israel know that, and that's why they're just picking it. Look, they're killing people in Lebanon, they're killing people in Syria, they're killing people in Iran, and they don't care, and nothing's.
Hang on, you said about Syria. Now I know Syria well. Iran, at the end of the day, why did they go into Syria? They are
talking about Israel.
No, I'm saying about killing people. Oh yes, yeah. Sorry, I misconstrued. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
Israel are killing people in Syria. Like the other day, they killed 14 people in Syria. No consequence.
Mm-hmm.
They killed like in a what do you call it? A civilian area. They killed one of the ministers for in Lebanon, in Hezbollah. They killed Ismail Hani in Iran. They don't care. And what I'm saying is, there's no repercussions.
There is actually a reason that Israel
because of the enemy within. That's also because of the enemy within. The enemy within is our so-called Sunni, Islamic leaders. Or
two things. And Bashar al-Assad. Bashar al-Assad is likely giving away.
It's not just the leaders. There's people in them countries. Like who do you think killed Ismail Hani? It was an Iranian. But
an agent in it.
They've got enemies within what she's saying.
Yeah, but how do these? No. It's not like, hello, what are you doing, Ahmed? Yeah, I'm gonna make a kebab and I'm gonna go and kill this guy. No, it's
already on that float. They're already on that.
No, but look, what's that? That's state level infiltration. That's state level infiltration. Still the same nefarious. Look, let's look at Netanyahu's reasons for doing all of this. Netanyahu knows that if he doesn't escalate, the minute this war stops, he's in prison.
That's 100% true.
Yeah. So what's he doing? He's poking Iran. He wants a response from Iran.
He wants a massive war. Yeah.
He wants a response from Iran. Now, look, if Iran had any kind of Islamic inclination, it would have the confidence to respond, come what may. And it has potential. It has considerable potential. If a country like Yemen, who has had sanctions, has been decimated, has probably, just coming out of even famine, has stood by its principles and enforced a blockade, gone out of its way, and then you've got people in Gaza who are, being starved out of existence and still fighting. It shows that if there's a will, there is a way.
Yeah, you're right. But when you've got nothing to lose, you're dangerous. That's the reality. Everyone knows.
Look, if you look for decades, there's a joke about Syria. Where whenever an event happens, like Bashar could get kicked in the testicles, and then they'd be like, it wouldn't even be a high pitched voice. It'd be like, we will respond at the right time. Yeah, it's been happening for decades because there is nothing. There is no substance to that statement. There's no substance to this axis of resistance. If anything, this is part of a Scooby-Doo plot, which is that we are this mythical axis of resistance, but nothing ever comes because they don't have the will. They're not sincere actors. Just look at, for example, Iran and its involvement with the Gulf War in terms of invasion of Iraq, in terms of clear collusion with America, in terms of its involvement in Syria alone, in terms of ethnically cleansing within Syria. There is nothing. This is the word now. I have this theory, I have this soundbite, which is called the law of. I'm going to another segue. You're going to have to bear with me, yeah.
Talking about.
I'm going to another segue, which is this. In critiquing Iran doesn't automatically mean that we're taking the pressure off other regimes, yeah. So, for example, how people act on this act of resistance is that because all these Sunnis, what about what they're doing, or Iran? Why are you having to go to Iran? All of them are lame. All of them are lame.
Yeah, but who's got the biggest army in the Middle East? Who's got the strongest army in the Middle East?
You tell me.
Turkey. Turkey's got the biggest, strongest army in the Middle East.
Mhm.
That guy is a monarchic, mate.
Yeah,
Sorry
no
for
doubt.
saying that. But
No
he's
doubt.
giving water to. He's still serving water to Israel. If he walked in with his army, the war would be finished.
So
He just talks the talk.
yeah,
He doesn't
no
do
doubt.
anything.
No
So-
doubt.
I get what you're saying about Iran, but rather than talking about just individual countries, just the Ummah in general,
Mhm.
it's like George Galloway said. Yeah, he said if the Islamic Ummah was a real thing, this wouldn't be happening.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure he's placed to say that as someone who's not a Muslim, but I mean it's a
No,
reality.
it's right. It's right. It's right. It's
It's a
right.
reality. It's a reality to what he's saying, right? What
It's absolutely
what
right.
we're doing, because everyone has got their own self-interest, and
Because
it's only the people that have got nothing to lose, Rash,
Mhm.
are actually fighting and doing something. Like the not it's not Yemen. Let's not pretend it's Yemen. We keep calling them the Yemenis. It's that one group, Ansar Allah, the Zaydis. It's not Yemeni. Yemen in general are not doing anything. It's this one group, and then there's another group in Africa now. Some I don't even think they're Muslims, but they're actually hitting ships that are going round. You don't have to go around all the way around to.
Mhm.
So these people have got nothing to lose, or they've got far less. When you see any of these countries that are like, because Turkey was quite a growing economy not long ago, and it's an emerging state, isn't it? So none of these people want to risk anything. That's the reality. But the people within the country, Turkey, Jordan, Egypt, you name it, Syria, they are absolutely crying out for they're protesting the same as more than what we are.
So what have you? So let's look at this. Let's analyze this then. Yeah. What we do is we pick up a history book. If we look, if you watch sci-fi and you look at the aliens invade and then they put their people down, and then you have these people like the series V, you have the collaborators. All of these rulers, when you pick up that history book, they are implants. Every single one of them.
The Stooges, all of them.
All of them. Just pick up a history of Al Saud, history of Egypt, history of UAE.
Al Sharif and Jordan as well.
They're all stooges.
I'm quite surprised to hear you say that about Al Saud, because I know you like those guys.
Oh yeah, of course, lovely.
That's a we've won that.
Eid presents, everything,
How
man.
come
You know what I mean?
saying that now, just a minute.
MBS, man, give me that bone saw, man.
But you know what it is, though, Rash. Yeah, let me say something. Yeah, that just put a spin on it. The Middle Eastern countries and beyond the Middle Eastern countries, even in a lot of the African countries that are currently oppressed, they're oppressed under trade agreements. There's lots of economic wranglings that are going on in the background that are making these countries impoverished. Yeah, because natural resource is there. Yeah, they are in that sense a much wealthier country, but they don't control their own resource. Yeah.
Mhm.
What I don't understand is, and I don't think Saudi Arabia is in the pocket of America, I'll be honest with you, because I think they've stuck two fingers up to them since America had a bit of an issue with them going into Yemen. So that's why now they've started to make alliances east. Do you get me? To try and find new allies. But what I don't understand is that these countries are absolutely threatened by the presence of Israel, because Israel represents Western hegemony in the Middle East. It's a colonial force that ensures that region is subservient to external powers. That means economically, and that means politically. So what is the interest of these countries to keep that hegemony alive? Why would they not use this as an example? And I'm not speaking about anything radical, but even deciding to send military forces to the border to say, right, this ends today, is something that they could do. And it doesn't make sense to me because
you're thinking
it solidified their own kingship. Do you understand?
It's
irrational.
No, but once they look, you're thinking from the point of view that they are representative of anything other than of the people or in anything. They're only concerned about their throne. If their throne, if the American says to you
about their throne, Rash, what I'm saying is, look, forget all of this stuff we're talking about, like religion and everything like that. If you've got a state and you're the local region, you want autonomy, you want economic dominance, you want the ability to have mulkiya power, isn't it? Yeah. So you can then run your country as you see fit. You're not enslaved. Yeah. What I'm saying is, if we put aside all of the moral and ethical issues that we have, that yes, they should go in on an ethical issue, yes, they should go in on a moral issue to try and stop the slaughter of these people. But let's put that aside. Let's look at the self-interest of some of these people. They're megalomaniacs, most of them. They want power. They want, even on that rationale, they should step in and sort this out. Do you get me? Because think how strong the Al Saud throne would be if he went and done that. Think about it. But why?
No, because why would any country want the monkey of America and Israel on your back? Like it's a much safer route to take by being on good terms with the biggest superpower in the world, the most wealthiest nation in the world.
But what are they going to do
against them? To fight against them.
No, but what are they going to do?
It's clear what they'll do. It's clear what they do. They've done it time and time over again.
No. What will they do? I'm asking what they're going to do. If we look at America, yeah, America's got the military power that it used to be. It's got a tremendous navy. So in the sea, America can do you over, yeah. But America rely on foreign bases. And let me ask you another question: when was the last time America won a war?
They don't need to win wars when they have plants, when they have coups, when they get rid of leaders.
Iraq probably.
We're talking about fear from an invasion or a military power, isn't it? But what I'm saying is,
I can tell you when they last lost the war. Afghanistan, isn't it?
No, but I'm going to ask you the other question. When was the last time America won a war?
You could say maybe if Iraq was some kind of a victory for them.
They never won that war. They go in and destroy countries, no doubt. They cause massive issues politically. Look for Afghanistan. They never even took more than the capital. Do you know what I'm saying? All of these places, they're not physically going to be able to cause an issue militarily. But I think that what the problem is that politically it could be expensive. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, America's bled out. It's bled out.
They don't have to go in, but
exactly. That's a problem. It's going to be expensive.
So look at, for example, look at Iraq, for example. You're looking at the peak, Afghanistan and Iraq were costing $5 billion a month for years. Then in terms of casualties, obviously they suppress the casualties. You're looking about 100,000 plus soldiers were rotated out with major injuries, etc.
There was a lot going on there.
Yeah, there's stuff, and even before when
that's why Trump don't want nothing to do with these wars. It ain't because he's like loving all these brown people. He just doesn't. He's thinking this is expensive, and we haven't got the money to handle this.
Afghanistan was a massive defeat. Was probably the bigger defeat than Saigon. So that lost them massive brownie points. Secondly, the fact they can't do anything about Yemen is another massive defeat. So, for example, these huge aircraft.
Want the Yemen thing, though, bro? Are you talking about this Ansar Allah?
They don't.
It's too expensive.
Yeah, well, it's not just expensive. No, just cost in terms of capability to put boots on the ground. They're going to need to be the land. They need to. So for example,
they need a base. They need a base to work from, innit? They can only come from the ocean, yeah.
And a warship is basically Ansar Allah. They can just lob missiles at this massive object, drones, whatever, saturate it in any number of ways. So America is just effectively warfare has changed as well. Drones have made a massive change as well.
So they've got cheap drones, bro. The Yemenis, the cost of them, you see them little videos
cheaper than Ram Lady Maplins, yeah.
Yeah, bro. So they can keep this up. Well, America's spending a lot of money. So
even this last saturation attack is that. Well, I think there's an economic issue. There's an issue of diplomacy. America is done. Israel will continue to try and escalate, and it is bleeding out. I would say this: look, Israel is bleeding out, and diplomatically they've lost all.
The world needs to stop this killing, man. Because if this amount of killing and savagery is just unbelievable. Like, I mean, and this is what I was saying at the beginning, is that what difference it will make. Not that people shouldn't do it. I boycott these products and stuff as well. I believe in raising your voice, as you see me on social media. But what I'm saying is it doesn't make a difference until, and I tell you what I see as the difference, yeah. If you look at the Jewish lobby in America and in Britain, it's very powerful, right? It's very powerful. Because they understand how to use their leverage, their influence, their economic. Because you've got to remember this year, when Herzl started this whole Zionist project, the idea was to move the Jews out. They were like the lowest people in society, economically uneducated. They were living in ghettos. That's where the word ghetto comes from, right?
Slough, yeah.
Slough, yeah. But we haven't, and I know what Fahim was making a good point. Things don't change overnight, but I think they can, but they won't. So what I mean by that is that we could definitely, in use our leverage, our economic leverage. You know the amount of money that Muslims bring to this country. We significantly impact the GDP, disproportionate to the number of population that we have. So we could definitely start the Islamic lobby, you know what I'm saying? Which means that we just look after interests that help the Muslim community, yeah? But we're not doing that, and we're not, I mean, look, even here in Leicester, the independent candidates, people still voted for Labour. So we had Muslim independent candidates, but the Muslim community wasn't able to unite, and even though he got in, it was a close run race because Muslims are not on board with that strategic thinking, that we utilize our numbers in terms of the voting, you know, boost. We utilize our economic capacity. We could even utilize the fact that, look, I'm not making a joke out of it, but I'm saying, look, how many Pakistani cab drivers are there? You get me? Like, imagine all the cab drivers said no cabs today, and how that would impact business, how that people couldn't get to their offices. Do you get me? Like, we can't even organize that. But we have the ability, the numbers, to do something that would make them listen to us. But we're failing to do that.
I got a little segue then on this point that you just mentioned about, you know, the financial impact. A lot of people are not going, you're rightly so, are not going through this way of doing things, but are now taking their money and existence out of the country in totality in the form of Hijrah, right? And now they see it as, okay, it's kind of like a lost cause in terms of, you know, a narrative that you hear now is like, okay, the UK is not the same. It's on that same kind of downward spiral as the US in terms of like living conditions for Muslims and how it is to be a Muslim, etc., etc. And a lot of Muslims are now even more so contemplating on even doing it at the concept of Hijrah, right? And moving to other Muslim majority nations, you can say.
Yeah.
In line with what you're saying in terms of that financial, you know, that financial boycott and that removal of that money within this country, circulating within this country.
Yeah.
Do you think, because again, we know that the circumstances are very different living in, let's say, a Gulf country, right? We know it's not the same as living in, you know, UK or US or in the case. Should we be making Hijrah? Is that something that's still valid? Is it even classified as a Hijrah, or is it just another economic move, right? You know, that's being done. And is it productive in this whole method, you know, in this whole idea of supporting and boycott and removing finances from the country as a whole? Is it, you know, I just want to get your thoughts on it. Is it more Deen impact, Dunya impacted? Is it kind of like people are just kind of fed up with the living conditions here and just want to seek a Dubai lifestyle or Malaysia lifestyle or whatever the case may be? So yeah, just want to get your
I mean, are you asking me or are you asking Rush?
Yeah, just everyone.
Anyone. Bahat, where's Bahat and Jamil? Bahat and Jamil, come on, man.
Wallah, you guys are speaking too well.
We were getting too.
I didn't want to interrupt. Look, okay,
They're speaking well.
I can talk about this topic a little bit since you guys spoke for long. I spoke very well. Look, Hijrah. The way I see Hijrah is this. Now I'm gonna speak very bluntly. I might be right, I might be wrong, but we can discuss it.
That's not like you, bro.
I say this. I say, if the system that you're going to live under is not implementing the hukm of Allah properly, and it's not based on the hukm of Allah, that Hijrah for me is useless. So what if it's majority Muslim? That means I can go to Slough or Luton or certain parts of London. It's going to be majority Muslim. I'm going to live my life freely. No one's going to really prevent me from doing salah, siyam. Our women are going to wear hijab, etc. We're going to eat halal food. But the point is the Deen of Allah implemented in Dubai? No, the Deen of Allah is violated there. Saudi, is that the Deen? No, it's crushed. It's stepped on. MBS is the king. MBS is the sovereign. MBS is the legislator. So what does this Hijrah mean at the moment? It doesn't make sense to me. I think it's more like a fantasy, if I'm being honest.
But what about what he was saying? Those things that he was mentioning. Sorry for him, but you know the point he made about the because what you're saying is true. So like you could make Hijrah to Leicester or Slough, same thing, right?
Yeah,
you probably get better food in Slough and Leicester.
Exactly.
But what about what he was saying about removal of our financial support for a country that's going to kill innocent human beings, and they happen to be Muslim as well? What about that?
Okay, fair enough. But the country that we're going to, UAE,
forget UAE. Yeah, forget UAE. But
yeah. So where are we going to go exactly? Look, if people say this, I can empathize with it. if people say, for example, let's say we're in London, right, or the UK, if the Pakistanis say, "Look, I'm gonna go back to my country and we are going to do dawah there to support the cause, the ummatic cause within our own nations," I could say, you know what, even if your countries are corrupt, you're kind of going to make change and you've got foundations there, etc. Fair enough. But for example, Muslimin going to Morocco, yani, why Morocco? You see my point?
Yeah,
What
I mean,
khair
there's
is that? What khair is there in going to Morocco? Apart from it being fun, maybe, I don't know. Let me not talk now. I don't
I mean,
get
some
Morocco. Have you been Morocco?
Of course, beautiful country.
No,
I don't
but
mean
you
in
know, like
that
Morocco
sense.
is
I'm
like,
saying why Morocco? Why? What's the maslaha? What's the khair?
no, it's good there. Like, it
It's
depends on the
it's
links you
bit
got. It
easier to
depends
live.
on the links you got, doesn't it? If you got links in Morocco, then that's why people will probably end up in Morocco. It's the closest country to Europe, isn't it? Or second closest. You got Algeria. So I
well,
think
can I jump in for a second?
Jump
Yeah,
in, my
Um,
brother.
I think it's a good point, right? So Hijrah is Hijrah, and you've got the correct Shari'i Hijrah, the Islamic Hijrah, and then you've got just migrating to a new location. And from a ordinary perspective, a non-Shari'i perspective, if someone can thrive and live in a better environment, whether it's based on the economy, whether it's based on safety, whether it's based on the weather, people do this anyway. If they have the ability, people tend to move and live in environments where they're most comfortable and most suited, whether it's, you know, Morocco or anywhere else in the world, right? Which is fine, and I think it's a good idea. I think people should live in locations where they're happier and healthier and then more progressive from a personal interest point of view. But now it gets complicated when we talk about the Shari'i Hijrah, which is technically the leaving of Dar al-Kufr to join the believers in Dar al-Islam. And Dar al-Islam is defined not based upon the population and the belief of the population, but it's focused on the laws and the ahkam which are implemented. So even if the majority of the population are non-Muslim, if the rules that are being implemented are from the Quran and Sunnah and are Shari'i, then if it's fully implemented, that can be considered Dar al-Islam. So that, I think that leads on to a bigger question now. When you look at Islamic law and you look at the ahkam and the differences of opinion, the real question is what constitutes ruling by the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? For example, allowing women to now drive cars, would this have an impact on a state being Dar al-Islam or Dar al-Kufr, for example? When we look at actual Islamic rulings, they are so varied and there are so many differences in them, it can become quite complicated. I'll give you an example, right? And this can be focused on Israel. And it's not designed to target or criticize anyone, but it's a fact, right? Those who believe that ruling by other than what Allah has revealed is kufr, which it is, according to the Quran. You know, a dog's a dog, black dog, white dog, green dog, whatever. If you're not ruling by the Sharia, you're not ruling by Sharia, whatever you call yourself. So when you have the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, in charge of an area of land, not ruling by the Sharia, or it could be Israel, not ruling by the Sharia, and then Hamas gets voted in, and they also do not rule by Sharia over a certain period of time. There were a group of Muslims in that area, and they were in the mosque called Majid ibn Taymiyyah, and they said, look, Hamas has been in power now for 2 years. We are requesting and requiring you now to do what you promised you would do, which is rule by the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you don't, we're going to go against you. And then, you know, Majid ibn Taymiyyah was blown to smithereens, by Hamas. And it's just an example of what do you define as ruling by the Sharia? In the past 20 years, there have been many different locations in this world where there's been contested control and groups have taken power and started to rule by what they believe or they claim is the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but have also been fought against due to claims that this is not ruling by the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, this could be due to laws that they've implemented internally, or it could be based on their allegiance and support from or to external agencies which are disbelieving, which in itself doesn't nullify the ruling of Sharia within a particular land. But I think it's a very, to say this is ruling by the Sharia, this is Darul Islam, and this is Darul Kufr, there are grey areas and it can be blurred. I just wonder what anyone else's thoughts are on that.
Couple of things to say about this. Look, certain common denominators, which exclude pretty much all of these regimes. Riba banking is a simple one. When Allah says that He declares war on it, it means as a state it has to be stamped out. So at the time of Fahd, they had riba banking. There's an entire institution being set up to honor riba contracts. All of them, pretty much, membership of the UN and their definition of human rights in terms of absolute, freedom of marriage. You can marry mushrik, etc., human rights. What they define as human rights, that's actually nullifies Sharia. So the point is, things about driving cars, etc. This is not something qati. This is not, even to the extent even the state involvement is not. So this is not concerned with that. You have the example of, for example, enforcing hijab, for example, or enforcing salah on people. There's not a strong precedent, Islamic evidence for you to enforce this. To spy on Muslims, to say, are you praying? Spying, absolutely prohibited. Having spying agencies to spy on Muslims, unless you're spying on the enemy, absolutely prohibited. So on all counts, 19%, 99% of these countries are not valid. They don't have bayah. They have kufr law. So the issue of hijrah, making hijrah to them, it's just going to be a matter of choice. A lot of people, there's the push factor, which is they feel that they don't have autonomy with their children. A big one is that, in terms of all these certain secular values being foisted upon them. That's a very common theme. The other side, the pull factor, is a romanticized notion about this kind of more lavish lifestyle. The kind of lifestyle is the kind of thing that just kind of makes me sick in my stomach when you see something as cringeworthy as an advert for something called a Badr Club, where you take something as noble as Badr and make it into some kind of a cut price Andrew Tate flipping Butlins.
The what club? The Bandar Club.
It might all be called the Bandar Club. The Badr Ghadr Club, where I genuinely, certain things make me sick to my stomach. That was definitely very high up on the list of, I completely missed the bit in Badr where they took a break and they went to a shopping mall and they were there, high production.
It had the little water bits in Badr, isn't it? The little
the water parks, jet skis.
So
I mean, is this what it's come to? As a grumbly old man, I'm gonna go to Mr. Walt Disney and say, "Yo, Disney, cryogenically he's dead now, but anyway, can you freeze me next to you and let me come out when society has reset? Because this kind of materialism, this kind of mentality, which this has some import into, rather than, for example, someone saying, look, I have a purpose." If, like Berhat, you said about a purpose, if you're going to give dawah, if you're going there to just kind of just have a nice and lavish lifestyle because Slough is a cesspool, fine, you want to do that, but don't spin as having a higher objective. I would say, in this country, I'm not, look, at the end of the day, if a disbeliever, I can say that, look, hello, what are you? He's a disbeliever. I don't have massive aspirations, expectations. If a person is going to set something up and say, look, we're going to go there, we're going to romanticize the notion of, oh yeah, it's great, etc., I'll say, look, it's not like that. It's not going to be, if what's your ultimate purpose? If it's to bring back Islam, it's to bring awareness, we have considerable opportunity here to give dawah. So tying back to your earlier point in terms of Muslim mobilizing, change does take time. And you are seeing major improvements, generation on generation. I can say that because
that is true. But what Jamil said was important. I think we've lost it because he mentioned what does constitute ruling by what Allah has revealed, which I think is a really important question. Because if you look at all the tyrants that we're talking about today, what's the difference between them? And even if we go back 12, 1300 years, when was the last time in some of these people's minds that what their expectation is? When was the last time that the Muslims were ruled by Allah's law, if they want to call it that? And then secondly, one of the questions, a follow-up question onto that, what Jamil was saying, I'd like to say, look, does the ijtihad of humans constitute the law of God? Because 85% of the Sharia is ijtihad of humans. It's not revelation from God. Do you get me?
Yeah. To add to that, this is what Dr. Muhammad al-Mas'ali would say. We would, Ricky, I sent you a voice note today, and it was just funny. You couldn't hear it.
Yeah,
I was explaining this. Dr. Mas'ali is arguing that the constitution is supposed to be based on the qat'iyat that is very clear, very self-evident, very explicit from the texts. And by doing this, we remove the Muslim church, i.e. the scholars, the clerics, and the sect with their own ijtihad and the baggage they bring to Islam. We remove that from the constitution, and the base is basically built upon the explicit, clear verses of the Deen, by the Quran, basically. So what do you say about that? If the base is built on that,
no, I think that's fine. But if
and Sunni Muslim Mutawatir as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but Mutawatir Sunan, they don't really legislate that much, by the way. That's why I didn't mention it. But yeah, fair enough.
But I think that sounds all right to me. But what I'm saying is, look, a lot of these countries are doing what is absolutely clear from the Quran. They don't. In a way, they don't go against it, except for the economic side of it. You know, with riba.
Isn't that part of it? Isn't it? So the other thing is also they've imported certain.
But you've mentioned it, so let's talk about it. Yeah, they'll justify it. So, for example, there's the convention that this is fiat currency. This is like fulus. It's not actual money. It's not actual wealth. So there's, for example, like look in Egypt, there's no riba on fiat currency. There's no such thing as riba when it comes to this kind of economy, because it's not built on the 6 categories that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned.
The thing is, look, there is.
Let me finish this point.
Sure.
I want to make this point because it doesn't mean everyone has to agree with me, but I think they should go away and study this issue, riba. Like Umar ibn Khattab said, the one thing I wish that the Prophet ﷺ had left more detail on was the rules of riba. Yeah. Some of the ulama have taken this hadith of the Prophet where he mentioned 6 categories as, okay, this is ta'budi. We don't understand it to the rationale behind it. We just say this is a ta'budi evidence. So we're gonna obey exactly what the Prophet said. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to extrapolate that into similitudes. Do you get me? So
yes,
they're not going to do qiyas. They're not going to do anything. So fiat currency is not covered in that. It is covered in that if you want to start making qiyas and whatnot. So what I'm saying is that even if now that could be a false fatwa, for example, could be a false fatwa, but this has been going on since the beginning of Islam. Look, Muawiyah in Syria was dealing in riba, famously. Like I can show you the hadith of it. He was dealing in wine, and there was one of the Sahaba shot the barrel, the convoy of wine. And if you look at some of the madahib, they allow that for non-Muslims. Yeah. That they allow the sale of wine in the country for non-Muslims. So what I'm saying is what is agreed upon on qat'i, and the Muslim countries are based on that. The constitution of Pakistan is based on Sharia.
There's no application. Look, a person can say they based on something, but then you execute something.
That's
something
what I'm saying, but they've based it on it, right?
No, but that's like me saying I'm a footballer, but I'm never going to play football, and I'm gonna. Or I'm just a bad analogy.
You look like a football. I don't know if you're a footballer.
Gulab Jamun. What do you call it? Bro,
I think that is a good point. In the voice note, Ricky, today I said this as well. It's actually like now I'm going to make very controversial statements here. If, for example, I'm going to start with Aqidah, because I'm going to start with this, then I'm going to lead it to jurisprudence and law. But if the Athari, if the Ash'ari, the Mu'tazili, and the Imami, and the Ibadi, if they are all Islam, then what is Islam? Similarly, if we're going to bring this to jurisprudence and law, with all these different fiqh issues that are actually about important things, by the way. For example, certain khilaf is trivial. Do I wipe my feet or wash my feet? Okay, no problem. But now this riba example you gave, who is the one that's in charge of this matter? Who says, yes, this is halal, this is haram? So on one hand, we would say, we would have a touch of secularism, if that's an appropriate term to use, meaning let's remove the clerics, let's remove the Muslim church from power. But then after that, so what is Islam based upon? Who decides what's right, what's wrong, which view is? You see what I mean?
Exactly.
In
That's
this
a
subject,
good point. That is
in
a
this
good
subject,
point.
in this subject matter, look, you have a discussion. So, for example, you for example, you gave the example Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu's point of view. This is his point of view. Now, you've also mentioned that, for example, he's not a faqih compared to, for example, Ibn Abbas or
Ibn Abbas allows riba.
Okay, okay. What I'm saying, I'll give you an example. What I'm saying is, look, there is just to fixate on one person's statement and then to make a premise out of it. Now, let's look at practically. These countries wholesale imported from the West entire legal statutes. They didn't say, okay, let's see this thing, let's see what's complies with Hukum Shura. No, they just took it. So that is ruling by kufr. Riba, now I would say, look, riba.
You can't get away with that, Akhi. You got to explain that because it's not.
I won't be able to. But what I'm saying, there are examples of.
It's not ruling by kufr unless it's contravening the law of Allah, because there's many laws that have the Quran says nothing about. Then you
this was instances of his. I can't really do justice to the subject, but there were certain aspects of penal law, all these kind of things, where there was something that Islam says about it. So what I'm saying is, look, they are secular. Now riba. I still say that riba at the end of the day, look,
that's a serious issue. I'm just saying that they don't. For example, look, the point I'm making is not that that's a correct opinion. The point I'm making is that, look,
it could be an opinion. Yeah. The point you're making is that it may not be the correct opinion, but it is one of a multiplicity of opinions.
So exactly, Jamil. Thank you. So
what defines legitimacy then?
The point I'm making this, Rash. So can we say they're not ruling by what Allah revealed? Because they're making an ijtihad based with evidences. Now they might be disingenuous, not genuine, but they're making and they have precedent for that as well.
For precedent will be Kitab and Sunnah. So if a person says this person's opinion, or they're just building on something on thin air,
precedent law, Akhi. You can't say that.
No, we have a different. We have our own creatures, Kitab and Sunnah. Just saying that someone said this, someone's hand waving type of arguments. Point is, look, let's practically look at it practically. If most of these governments, for example, have little legitimacy because of, say for example, UAE, all these hereditary monarchies, all these dictatorships like Egypt, the mere fact that they have a ruler who does not have the consent of the people, the dictatorship invalidates them. Now, the second question is
that sounds like a very Islamic situation.
What do you mean invalidate?
I just want to
the people, and they rule. That sounds like a very Islamic situation.
Yeah,
I just want to jump in on something, if I may. Yeah, because you made a very good point, and that's basically about ultimate authority. Yeah, I don't know what's happened with the screen there.
We can hear you though. Don't worry.
Okay, fine, no problem. So there are aspects of ruling. Rush has quite rightly pointed out that a lot of constitutions were directly imported from Qanun, meaning Western legal systems and things like that. If they don't contradict the Sharia, then from a difference of opinion perspective, then they can be accepted if they're not contradicting Sharia. But the main point here now is authority, siyada, right? And this is where recognition on the international stage comes into it, and one of those is being a member of the United Nations, and as part of that you're a member of the UN Security Council. Now, what does it mean to be a member of the United Nations? What does it mean to agree to the UN Charter? What does it mean to be part of the Security Council? Well, what it ultimately means is that each member state's domestic law must be subservient and subject to international law. So the authority is not to that national state's law. It is ultimately adhering to international law, which is agreed by all member states, which supersedes domestic legislation. And based upon that, there is allegiance and disassociation. So just to go into a bit of an example about this, back in 1996, when the Taliban started to take over most of Afghanistan, there was a very big discussion in the international community and also in the Islamic community with regards to how is this going to go? What will happen when the Taliban take control? Are they going to be a pariah or are they going to be part of the international community? There was an intense meeting and intense discussions with ulama from all over the world, from Pakistan, from Malaysia, from Saudi Arabia, from Egypt, from multiple countries. And the discussion was, can a state that wants to rule by the Sharia subject itself or agree to subject itself to international law by the United Nations? Some opinions of the scholars were, yes, you can say you're doing it, but don't do it. Other opinions were, yes, you can do it out of absolute necessity, because if you don't do that, you're going to be subject to sanctions and your people will suffer. The other opinion was no. To seek legislation from a taghut, which is an authority other than the Quran and Sunnah, other than the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is complete shirk and it cannot be done. And that was the position that the Taliban took. And then they faced whatever they faced. But now we can see that the United States and the international community and armies from around the world left with their tail between their legs. The Taliban are in power in Afghanistan. Whether or not they are in detail ruling by the Sharia is a different aspect. But it shows this position is not so much relating to international domestic law and interpretation of Sharia, of which there can be many differences of opinion, and of which there will be extreme thinkers and groups that will say they're not ruling by the Sharia when they are, because there's legitimate ikhtilaf. But the bigger point is, if you are adhering to international law and international standards, you're a member of the UN Security Council, which will determine its allies and enemies based on its own ideology, which is based upon liberalism and democracy, then you're going to end up in a very awkward situation. And if you are adhering to international law and that has authority over your domestic Sharia law, then you cannot be considered to be Dawla Islamiyya. You can't be considered as Darul Islam, unfortunately.
I think what you said is very interesting, because it shows there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. It says Islam is always the uppermost. So we're not to be ruled by other than the Muslims. In other words, Islam has to be the most powerful. And you just highlighted why. Because no matter what you do, you're always in a state of compromise unless you have the power to be autonomous. And the world scene at the minute would negate that being very easy. Because even the Taliban, it could be argued, have not had a very productive build. Like, for example, say they took over in the 90s, they were obviously ousted by America, and they haven't had a continuity that allows them to build like a solid economy, a solid infrastructure. Do you know what I mean? So it has inhibited them. So I think that's very important to remember, that the power structure and the power dynamic is always something that we should be looking at. And that's what America are looking at. Do you know what I mean? That's some of the moves they make to make sure that they still have the power dynamic so that they can leverage against every country that they need to.
I think, look, in terms of overall, if you look at the whole subject, the whole situation as it is, a person's responsibility will always be the same. If you're in a secular nation, it's always going to be about dawah. So a couple of things to state. When the Prophet ﷺ did his hijrah, now I know people say that he went to establish a state. The actual stronger supported narrations talk about the Prophet ﷺ, when he approached these tribes, it was to protect him for the dawah. So there was always this process of building the society. Second thing to bear in mind is around, is there provision for multiple states? Now, there is a new piece of work that has been produced which goes through this entire subject, and it shows there is provision for multiple states. This is a bit of a controversial point for some people, but the point is there are stipulations. For example, if you look at the Muslim lands, you can have some kind of a confederation between people. There is a stipulation, though. Each of those regions would have to rule by Islam. There's also, for example, if you have this situation of difference of opinion, there is a mechanism whereby, so for example, you have three parties campaigning. Your remit will be to educate the people. Now, Islam doesn't mandate big state in the sense that the state has involvement in every affair. It's really down to the bayah. So, for example, if people say, "Look, we don't want to have our rubbish collected. We're going to handle it ourselves. We're not going to have sanitation. We'll just do it in a bucket and throw it outside." And and one of the parties says, "You know, yeah, we'll handle that. We're Slough Borough Council. That's well within our remit." And you elect for them. That bayah becomes binding on them. It's down to this bayah. There is an element of level of state involvement, and there can even be incorporated in terms of what adoption you will have. However, the adoption the state will have cannot be something completely like clearly kufr buah. So there may be.
I think a state model in and of itself is antithetical to religion or to Islam. Like, if you look at what is a modern state? A modern state, post-Lutheran revolution, was designed to replace God. That the ultimate authority will be the state because we don't know what God would say.
Mhm.
That's the origin of the modern state. So while we're talking in this whole language of the Sharia, we have to look at the state as an entity, and the state itself is antithetical to Islam and to the Sharia. There's a book called The Impossible State.
Yeah. Well, however, look, in practical terms, look again. There are certain remits which an authority is the only one who can execute, treaties, etc., etc. Now, realistically, if you were living in, for example, a small town and you had a local authority, and you're not going to have necessarily the level of infrastructure, you can have a limited authority. You can be like a tribe, whatever it may be. But what I'm saying, realistically, now that societies have developed to a certain point, the likelihood is, if you go do a poll of, say, Egypt, would you like to have like 50 different small insignificant things? Here's a bucket for you. Yeah, here's your water. This is your weekly allocate. We're not going to get involved in this. I miss the state. I'm not going to get involved. Or do you want something else? If they agree in their bare contract, we want something a bit. We'd like to have running water, please. Then that's going to be a de facto a state kind of engagement. The question is, this authority, what is its remit? Now, the remit of the state, certain things it can't, for example, do. Spying, for example, one thing straight off the back, which delegitimizes all of them. Spying agencies, Mubahid, Mukhabarat, all this gotta go. All this the only time you can have spying is on foreign entities if they're their machinations on your lands. That's the area that you can do. So all these things can be settled. We're at this point, however, whereby the discussion hasn't even matured to the point of Shura. So, for example, Shura is a mandate. Having this idea of there has to be consent is not even clear in the minds of the people. They think you can take power by force. They think you can, for example, force the length of your beard. That's not Islamic. There is a time, there's a clear precedent of Asma bin Abi Bakr. She came to the Prophet ﷺ. She wasn't wearing hijab, or wasn't adequately, I don't know, can't recall the exact specifics. And the Prophet ﷺ, he's the head of the state, bear in mind, he looked away. He is the Prophet. If it was an obligation on him to enforce it, he has failed in his duty. So what does that mean? His action of turning away means that's not the job of the state to enforce. There's certain things of aura which have to be covered for public. Now, you mentioned the example of alcohol. There were alcohol markets at the time of Umar al-Khattab for the non-Muslims. Between them, they were trading. And then when they wanted to pay the jizya, they wanted to pay an alcohol, and Umar al-Khattab refused it. They went and sold it, and then they paid the jizya from the proceeds. The point is, they have, in fact, non-Muslims had greater autonomy than than us as Muslims or atheists or Christians or Sikhs have in this society, because they had because it was effectively a confederation. The Jewish tribes, for example, they were joint. Riba was absolutely off the table. Again, just another reinforcement. Riba, they couldn't do riba. That's creation of wealth from nothing. They had joint treaties. You can't have, for example, an alliance with Quraysh. But this is the issue of al-wala al-bara. It's actually mawada. It's about allegiance and hostility in terms of allies. in terms of things. And the other one was, in terms of joint economic affairs. For example, when the Prophet ﷺ went to get, for Diya, blood money, and at that time when they tried to assassinate the Prophet, the famous incident was on the issue of the Prophet ﷺ, trying to get some ransom money, as part of the agreement. So this is that relationship of a confederation. So the point is, it's not insurmountable. It's not something that is impossible to navigate. It is something doable. However, that discussion hasn't necessarily happened, and there's certain things off the bat which hasn't even happened, which is how integral Shura is.
You smashed it.
Okay.
I'm listening to that. These are good points, especially Shura. Like Shura is a command and obligation in a place where there is no nas, where there is no divine text, which is basically the field of Ibaha, and the Muslims are supposed to have a council or consult one another, and that's left in a very flexible way, which can lead to something democratic in our current times, due to democracy being an Ibaha, a Mubah, and it's actually quite linked to Shura, right? Very well, at least.
Yeah, just one thing to clarify. Some people, when they hear the word democracy, they think that they assume it's secular liberal democracy. It's just a term here. It's not. It's basically just when you use the term, it's just around the fact that it's consultation and shura.
Yes. So Western democracy would be man's the legislator. Whatever man agrees upon, that's legislation. But Islamic democracy will be within the framework of the nusus, divine texts. So yeah, that's a very important clarification.
Yeah, but then arguably, there is Shura. Shura is not the same as democracy at all, because the ruler has the ability to overrule all of the advice, and that's the difference. That's the reality of it. We can pretend this otherwise if you want, but the reality of it is that the caliph or the ruler, whatever you want to call him, has the ability to veto that.
Is that necessarily from Hukum Sharia? Because look. So this probably would need, because no, I know that, for example,
the Prophet said, "Obey the Emir unless he tells you to disobey Allah." So that means if his decision is final in that sense.
There is more narrations than that. You even have the narration of, for example, if you ask for mercy, there's another Dawah Dojo narration which talks about if you ask for justice, if you ask for leniency, and basically the long and short is if they refuse it, you can carry a sword on the back. The question of Shura.
That's different, because you're speaking about a situation where they're going against the people's rights.
But the thing is, if you put certain things into your Bayer contract, that you must do this, and it's effectively a nullification of that, then that's a different issue. That could be, by you going against your actual contract. Just like, for example, hey, it's actually the opposite. You can put things in your manifesto and they're not bound by it. The difference is
like what you're talking about. Shura, we do shura. What I'm saying is the shura does not obligate the ruler. I'm going to explain. So, say for example, let's say something happens today outside. Yeah, we all have shura. You're the emir. Yeah, you say, right, this is the judgment. Then, if we've given you bay'ah, then you have that ability to veto us. What I'm saying is that's different to what you're saying. You're speaking about, we're not going to be able to come up with every eventuality and put it into some sort of contract of bay'ah. Do you see what I mean? Things are going to happen on the bounce. And it happens even in this country. Like, we don't dictate what Labour are going to do, economic policy, this and that. We might disagree with it. But once we've given them that ability and new things happen, then the rulers do what they want. And I don't think it would be otherwise. I think that even in Islam, that convention is there. And it always has been there.
Look. There's one thing which is the fundamentals of, in terms of election of ruler. There may be some nitty-gritty. I'll need to look into this, because I do know that at the time of the Khulafa Rashidin, Abu Bakr, Umar Radiallahu anh, they used to have. It was a very open forum for discussion. And you have
you can say that. I don't think that's accurate historically, but you can say that if you want.
Okay. I'm gonna ask this question tomorrow, actually. On one of our
actually, there are many.
Abu Bakr's time when he became caliph was not an open decision for people. There were 400 horsemen on the street of Medina. The Alawites were threatened. Umar went to the house of Sayyidah Fatima and threatened to burn it down. Why? Because there was like Ali, Talha, etc., Zubair in there, and they were not giving bay'ah. The Bani Hashim didn't give bay'ah. So these things were not like, you know, free discussion and free thought. No, you will give bay'ah under intimidation. So
But some of those narrations will need to be checked because some of them are strong, some of them are weak.
No, all of these things are historical facts.
Look. Even some of these, for example, some of the Shia narrations, they talk about
these are not Shia narrations. These are Sunni narrations. I haven't gone to the Shia narration.
Okay. But anyways, this is something we can look into.
I'll say this though. I'll interject by saying this: as long as the leader is not going against Kitab and Sunnah, I don't think it's very problematic for him to, let's say, go against the majority decision of the Shura Council, unless the whole Shura, unless the whole Shura literally agreed upon something, right? And then there's the one guy, the Khalif or the Imam, who goes against it. Then that would be a bit problematic, right? It wouldn't make sense. But generally speaking, in the field of Ibaha, the Imam or the Khalifa will have a Shura council and he will get ideas, etc. Then he will make the final decision. The important thing is that these are the tools of Ibaha. It's not about halal and haram. If we emphasize that halal and haram are the clear-cut red line things that no one can go against, then all these tools of mubah and permissibility is okay. That's number one. Number two, another thing that we need to bear in mind is the Sharia does not mandate or legislate or let's say enforce the idea that there needs to be one Khalifa. This Khalifa system is not really clearly established anyway. So we can have new systems where it's not a Khalifa, or for example, he does not rule or govern us until he dies. Maybe we can make a contract in the constitution that he will only govern for 7 years, the leader, for example. So that man, the governor, who will govern us for 7 years, he wouldn't have absolute authority. So these are the four things to bear in mind.
So I get you on this point about you can put in your bay'ah contract. So for example, if your society is that we want to put this in your contract, having multiple leaders in the same domain, I'm not seeing that because obviously because there's a distinction that needs to be made. So Medina, for example, was a domain of Hijrah, where anyone who joins, makes Hijrah, becomes a citizen. Yeah. There is provision, there is evidence to stipulate that those people who wanted regional autonomy, and they would say, for example, we're in this land, we're going to rule by Islam. If you have that central authority and another person comes to dispute, as in dual leadership, someone saying, look, I want the bay'ah, then you can't have that. That's where the hadith which talks about strike the neck of the man.
That makes perfect sense what you're saying. But I think the thing is, what you're saying basically, from what I've understood, is that everyone will be it's like the United States of America. Each state has its own law, doesn't it? And can run almost autonomous, but it has recourse to central authority if required. It's got its own court system, its own laws.
The point is, you can have that. Look, fundamentally, what is it? You have what's called the domain of Hijrah, whereby anyone can join. So Medina was that anyone, that's the central authority. You can also have other states if they turn around and say, look, we're not going to be part of you. We will, so for example, you had examples of tribes when there's going to be Ghazawat, they join you, they will have a share of the booty. If they don't join, they have nothing to do with you. Even there's more complexities around that, even in terms of protecting them. So there's even things like around that. But the point is, there is that provision of autonomy. You don't have to. It's down to if, for example, a massive landmass, they decide, look, Syria, we're going to be autonomous. Egypt, Turkey, whatever, they decide to join as part of one khilafah. Fine. This other entity that's separate. As long as they're not allied with the kuffar, they rule by Islam, you're on good terms. You're part of this overall confederation. I may be mixing up federation, confederation, whatever it may be. But the point, there is precedent for that. And it's actually in this written work, Citizenship, Hijrah, Citizenship by Dr. M.
I think Muslims need to really develop political theory because we're really lacking in that. I mean, one of the things Berhart mentioned, which was, I think is probably the most important issue to resolve, actually, is removal of a leader. The Islamic, traditional Islamic, what do you call it? Ahkam al-Sultaniyya. What is that? The laws of government. That
Ahkam al-Sultaniyya, what you do, you take it and shred it.
no, you're talking about the book, but what I'm
It's okay,
talking,
yeah. But they are,
I'm talking
yeah.
about the science,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So it does not have a convention to remove a ruler, and I would argue that that was the way that it was with the Khulafa, because they could not remove Uthman. If the people didn't want Uthman, the Sahaba didn't want Uthman. There was a real fitna at that time, and there was no way to remove him. And unfortunately, the worst thing happened. He got killed. Do you see what I mean? Like that revolution ended up with killing Uthman, and that can't be the only way that we can remove a ruler that we're not content with.
Mhm.
So I think Islamic political theory needs to be developed in sense
Yeah.
that we need peaceful mechanisms, because it's not conducive to the building of a society to keep having this upheaval and these revolutions.
Well, look at it. There is provision for Mahkamat al-Madhalim, the Court of Unjust Acts, whereby you have an autonomous judgeship, which if the Khalif steps out of line, he's subservient. He is effectively accounted by that. So this, I mean,
I'm saying it's never happened, has it?
look, there's a difference between as what do we do? We say this is what we want. This is our end game.
Yeah, I agree.
What's everything up to that point? What's everything up to that point is dawah. It's educating the people. So this whole idea of this illegal precedent, no, this is what we want to get to. This is what we're going to educate the people. We're going to produce. This is our work. This is our evidence. These are all the isnads. This is what we're discussing. What's your counterpoint? People campaign on it. People say, yes, I'm convinced of this. 20%, 30%, 50%, 100%, whatever it may be, that goes into your constitution.
Yeah.
That's the process. Question is this: has Islam discussed it? Yes, it is. So, or at least somebody's saying that it has discussed it. It's important for a person to say that, hello, I have this point of view, to discuss it, to analyze it, and if it's strong, to adopt it, and then to campaign on it, to educate others. It always comes down to the same thing, which is a educational process, because ultimately the state itself is built on the people and the understanding of the people, and it's on us to educate the people.
Should we wrap it up, Rash?
I go, inshallah. We kind of like to end on a positive note. I guess this is probably quite a comprehensive, quite a heavy issue, but inshallah, ultimately, I'll just closing word say that, look, as an ummah, the fact that we're having this conversation shows progress. The fact that there are people like ummatics who are discussing these issues, the fact that you have awareness happening, you have, whether it's in the West, people campaigning for Palestine, etc., it is all signs towards progress. And one of the benefits of being in the West is the ability to influence and speak openly and discuss. They used to call London Londonistan. A lot of ideas were fermented from here as well. So inshallah, we can all play a part and we can all build knowledge. I know with you guys, you've been going into stuff, heavy duty, detailed, conceptual stuff, way over my head, and I don't follow the voice notes, but this is all signs of progress, inshallah, and we all need to carry on with it, inshallah. Jazakallah khair, inshallah, yeah.